Welcome to As Long as the River Flows, a Keepers of the Water podcast. Episode 20 is part 1 of a 2-part episode on the protection of treaty with Margo Auger from Treaty 8. In Canada, treaty rights are constitutionally protected under Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982, recognizing and affirming the rights of Indigenous peoples. This protection ensures that treaties, including modern treaties, are given the force of law. Join Keepers of the Water and discuss the protection of these treaties with Margo Auger of Treaty 8. Margo Auger is a Nehiyaw Iskew from Bigstone Cree Nation.She is a wife and mother to 3 beautiful children and Kokum to one handsome grandson. She is a working professional with over 26 years of experience. Her background is in First Nations governance and leadership, executive management, chief administration leadership, and as a certified use planner and project manager. She has worked in municipal government and the energy sector with oil sands companies as managing growth consultant for the Alberta government and Treaty 8 First Nations.
Kinaskump na ga kyo anot go pames machehtayan gatam squaw kuneg elders anot kamachay mahata pames anot kamachehtaig. Thank you. First off, and askum awas chaya. Jess, kawisam goya kanot bibigix kuya. So in my language, I just wanted to say that I acknowledge the elders who started us off with the prayer this morning. My name is Margo Auger. I work with Gwen. Gwen basically has been working for the Treaty 8 Chiefs organization since it started 25 years ago. I am a chief administrative officer. We work directly for the chiefs, and so basically I'm the one who operates, administers their office. And we have a small team, and as Gwen mentioned, we do a lot of protection of our inherent and treaty rights, and it's a lot of political advocacy. So we work directly for Grand Chief She and the sovereign nations. I'm from Bigstone Cree Nation, and you heard I do speak my language. I'm a mother of 3, a very, very young grandmother of 1. And I'm a wife, so I have a very, very busy life. And since I started working for Treaty 8, I have not seen my family much, just so you know. I want to talk about before treaty. So yes, we are treaty peoples, but why were we able to enter into treaty? When we say we're sovereign nations, why do we say that? Before treaty, I acknowledge myself, I identify myself as a Bigstone Cree Nation Nehiyaw Iskew. I am not an Albertan. I am not Canadian. I am a Nehiyaw Iskew from Bigstone Cree Nation. That is who I am. That's my identity. We have the Denesinale and Nehiyaw peoples in Treaty 8. I'm only going to talk a little bit about what's now, we were really trying to get out of differentiating ourselves with the provinces. So we work for the 23 nations within Alberta boundary, but we are working in alliance with all of the Treaty 8 nations located within BC, Northwest Territories, and Saskatchewan. We have inherent rights. And what does that mean? Inherent rights, we're born with them. It's in the blood. It came with us when we were born. That's not anything that can be taken away by any monarchy, by any government, by any province. It wasn't taken away by any Indian agents. 7 generations after the entering of Treaty Number 8, I know who I am now, since I've been decolonized by our elders and Grand Chief She and Gwen. We've always managed our livelihood. So when Sharon was talking earlier about, that ceremony, the traditional governance, that natural laws, we still have that. It's just that from generation to generation, we haven't really communicated or educated our own people about it, but it's still there. We know it. We're sovereign peoples of the land. That's who we are. We have the natural laws and all that inhabited. So when you think about this, we talk about the land. You see this a lot, especially with this infamous provincial government these days. Everything connects us to that land. That is who we are. We have those inherent rights. So that's who we were before treaty. That's who we still are today. When our ancestors entered into treaty, it was under this understanding. And this is why, and I understand that there's some lawyers here today. It's pretty cool, right? We work with our own Nehiyaw lawyers as well. The difference with our Nehiyaw lawyers is that they know who we are and they know our inherent rights and they know our treaty rights. However, because they are bound or, they what is it called? Where you go into a bar, you swear an oath for the Canadian Constitution. That's a difference, right? So, but this is the understanding. The British Crown. The sovereign nations entered into treaty with the British Crown, eye to eye. That is the level of authority and jurisdiction the nations have. You see that language quite a bit in what's coming out of the treaty office. So when you see the media releases, the statements that Grand Chief Arthur makes, that's where he's talking from. That's sovereignty. Who here is First Nation? You're royalty. That is what? That is the highest level of authority we have. It's just we've never been taught this, right? Because we were assimilated and colonized into a process, into a system, into a structure that is not ours. So the day of the treaty, the understanding, the signatories to the treaty number 8 in particular, I'll talk a little bit about treaty number 8, a little bit mostly about treaty number 8, but it's the same, it's true spirit and intent. And then the British Crown. So when our Indian agents came to be, it was a little different for treaty number 8. I won't get into that. But there was this conversation, this agreement, our oral history and understanding. We haven't lost that. Those treaty promises. Why? Why do we have those treaty promises? So that the Queen, at the time, her subjects, the monarchy, her settlers could come and share the lands with us in peace and friendship. However, it was also to be, the understanding is that we were to benefit in the bounty and benevolence of the Queen for sharing those lands and settlements. It is written in our documents, that is about one of the few things that we will agree to, what the commissioners wrote, what Canada uses, what the lawyers use. But it's always that interpretation, right? And they can't change our oral history because here I am, 7 generations later, and I'm saying the same thing they're saying. There was a number of promises. So we talk about those promises. Education, health, those were all on the table. There's a new bill that came out federally today, or yesterday. It's the one about the guns. I'm like, my God, you guys. Treaty relationship. When we talk about that, what are we saying? Bullets were to be supplied. They're really not honoring the treaty promises. And why? Well, we'll get into that. It was supposed to be in that peace and friendship. So Gwen, be that First Peoples. You see that handshake? You see it all over the place? Come shake my hand, girl. That was what the agreement was. We will coexist. What's the problem? They never honored it. Never. 123 years later for us at Treaty 8, they haven't honored it. How did the Crown obtain title? You heard Sharon speak. They don't have title. She's so correct. They don't. The colonial timeline. So what happened? You've also heard recently, and things came out even more so through the 215 Kamloops discovery. I'm not going to say discovery because we knew they were there. We know our people always knew that our children didn't make it home. Sharon spoke about the doctrine of discovery. I'm not sure about your speakers the last couple of days because we've been very, very busy. Didn't get a chance to come and listen to the awesome speakers. But there was a papal bull. There was this policy decreed by the Pope. You saw this as well. Some of this came out in the recent, when the Pope come to visit. Treaty 8 nations really just, some of them went, in honor and just to support their elders, those who believe in the symbolism of the Pope. But you also saw Grand Chief with the press releases and why our conversations, our discussions were you had to basically rescind that doctrine of discovery. Doctrine of discovery, terra nullius, what does it all mean? 1492-93. It's this. This is exactly what they did, basically. Cleo, and I'm going to answer your question later on about AFN. I found your purse. You left it there. It's mine now. I discovered it. Therefore, it's mine. Right? That's what they did with our land. That's what they did with us. But what else did they say? What else was in that language? So you're going to see me move around because I'm not really somebody who stands still and I'm not a very quiet person. They basically said, So, when they discovered the land over here, and then they went back to the Spain monarchy at the time and said, there's savages over there. What do we do? Well, what did they do? They created this papal bull and said, they are not Christians as they understand it, as Christians as they were. They are heathens. They're not human beings. Therefore, they do not matter, basically. They do not exist. Terra nullis says that they come and discovered this vacant land. It wasn't vacant. The archaeologists have showed that, right? That's what that means. That still exists. Why is it important, even though it says 1492, 1493? Because they're using it in the law courts today. They're still using it today. The Royal Proclamation, I'm not going to go into, there's a lot of legislation, and it's really, really gross. How they all come and thought that they come and own this land. But what did they do with us? When we present this to our own peoples, our own students, they ask, why didn't our ancestors fight? Why? Well, it's because they boxed us into all this legislation. They didn't let us off of our reserves. They put us on our reserves. We weren't supposed to be on reserves. We weren't allowed to hire lawyers, right? And we sure have a lot of them now. In fact, our own people are lawyers. But what happened? It was a royal proclamation. Even though it says 1763, that still matters today. Why? Why does it matter? It says we have Aboriginal title to our lands and territories. That still exists. The only thing is it's been interpreted, misinterpreted, misinterpreted. Every single time we go to court for our lands, our resources, our waters, etc. I also want to add in the Royal Proclamation, that was intended, actually I'll go into it again a little bit more of the history here. But there was a 7-year war. When we're in social studies, you're taught that this is how it is. So I thought, I have a governance background. I'm a land use planner by trade as well. So I thought, oh man, I know I'm a Canadian. I know the Canadian laws, and I work for a municipality as lands and planning manager, and I'm managing all these lands. And I thought, oh my God, I kind of work for Treaty 8. I went and worked for industry for 5-6 years. Have an oil sands background as well, so I have an understanding. And I thought, man, I know this stuff. I come to work for Treaty 8 and oh my God, what was I doing, right? I was managing our territory on behalf of the municipalities and the province and the process, not realizing who I was. When we talk about that Royal Proclamation, that 7-year war, King George III at the time came back and said, we ceded the lands and territory from Spain, but we didn't cede the Indians. When I say cede, it's C-E-D-E. The irony, right? Our ancestors fought with the Britons. They won. Now we have this monarchy here, this British monarchy. But we didn't cede our lands either. So, where did you get title from? You might have won the war with Spain. You didn't cede anything. But thank you still. Your Royal Proclamation is still beneficial to us. Johnson versus McIntosh is one of the case law in the States that ties into the Doctrine of Discovery and the Royal Proclamation. That's why we include it in here, is because it's still utilized, even though it says 1823 was very significant. Everything ties into who we are, our lands, our territory, our people. The Gradual Civilization Act, the 1869 Enfranchisement Act. I can't say that word with my Cree tongue. But they created a whole bunch of legislation, and what I didn't include in here, we talk about citizenship and membership. Of all the nationalities that are in Canada today, what's known as Canada today, we are the only peoples that have an act on us that tells us who we are. And as we make children, as we make grandchildren, still to this day, they're determining how much bloodline, treaty bloodline, is in our children, our grandchildren, etc. Still to this day, 2022. Those acts were combined. So there's, even the words themselves, gradual civilization, enfranchise. I can't say that word. But you know what they mean, right? You're going to gradually civilize those Indians so that they become one of us, that they become part of our society, of our system. And we're going to trick them, we're going to let them go fight for our lands and go into war, but we're going to franchise them. I hate that word. But basically, they started taking our rights away in any way they could. But you know, when you talk to some of our elders today and you hear and you say, well, yeah, we signed script, but it was with the understanding because I know who I am, my inherent and treaty rights. I didn't think I was going to lose those kinds of rights when they come and made me sign it, because you can't take that away from me. It's inherent, right? Those are some of the conversations. Then they had this BNA Act, and that's when this whole Dominion of Canada came to be. Again, it's taught different in our schools, right? My kids have a kid in grade 11 right now, and he's not learning it the way I'm teaching it. They create all these sections, and this is kind of a conversation today with this Sovereignty Act, right? And you also see what never changed here as well. And I am only for this one, just for this particular presentation, including when the Treaty Number 6 Sovereign Nations entered into treaty, 1875. When the Treaty 7 Nations, Sovereign Nations entered into treaty, 1876. And when we entered, 1899, it was with the British monarchy. It was not with Canada. Just so you know. 1876 Indian Act. Even though these dates refer to hundreds of years ago, this is still relevant. This is that act I was talking about. Sure, it's been amended and amended and amended and amended, but it still exists. That tells us, did you guys know that that act still to this day determines how we will have a chief and council, how structure, how we will have, how we'll operate and administer. And by the way, this is how you'll operate and administer your band with these limited funds. By the way, we're holding your funds. We'll determine how much you get. By the way, you can make this bylaw self-determination, self-governance, but it's not within our system, not the way we understood it. And if you don't, we're going to hold your money from you. And by the way, we're still controlling your lands, your resources. By the way, we're still creating all these acts and legislation. And you guys go be good Indians until we assimilate you even further and get rid of your treaty territory. You know, it's also interesting. Me as a woman, can one of the male First Nations people who has status or treaty rights hold your hand up, please? Is there anybody here? You have more rights than I do as a woman, still to this day. Still to this day. In fact, you know what they didn't amend? You and I are not supposed to go into pool halls. That's still in there. You know, the other thing as well, not that we have pool halls anymore. They're a little different now these days, right? But that's still in there. They didn't amend, even though they shut down the last residential school in 1996. That is still in their Indian Act. They can still go ahead and start up their own residential schools again. 1878 was when that first Prime Minister of Canada came to be. And of course, you know, that's the one that's been famous for starting up and ensuring that the industrial schools took place. And when it got too expensive for the Dominion of Canada, they started the residential schools. And then they come and brought us some poison, and Spanish flu came to be. Still couldn't kill us off. Let's adopt them out. 60 scoop. Let's just do everything we can to try and get rid of these Indians. And now today, it still exists. It's called CFS, Children Family Services. Alberta government won't let go of our kids. The other one here is 1889, St. Catharines Milling and Lumber. Again, that one actually was in Canada, and it all ties in again. It ties into the doctrine of discovery and that policy, you know, that says that we are not humans. 1905, isn't this? Did you see this? You saw our media releases. 1905 is when Alberta came to be. 1905. Look at those treaties there. 1875, 1876, 1899. They are still alive. They still exist. We've been sharing the land. We keep sharing the land. How much more do we have to share the land? Alberta government. 1930 Natural Resources Transfer Act. That's another one. So all that time, while they didn't allow us to go to court, didn't allow us to have legal representation, they came to be this province, and they're going to start managing the lands, the waters, the resources, trap lines. All of a sudden, that's one of our inherent rights. It's not a treaty right; it's an inherent right. They negotiated with the Dominion of Canada and said, hey, this province is rich in natural resources. We want to be able to manage them, to profit off of them, and we'll share with you, Canada. 20-some years, but they did it, and they passed it, without the treaty people.
Thank you for listening. That was Margo Auger of Treaty 8. If you would like to donate to the cause or find out more about Keepers of the Water, visit our website at keepersofthewater.ca. Make sure you go to the Keepers of the Water YouTube channel and Facebook page and like and subscribe for more content. And don't forget to download and subscribe to the podcast to be the first to hear new episodes. Miigwech.